KP's Video News, y'all. It's KP's Video News, y'all. It's KP's Video News, y'all. It's KP's Video News, y'all.
KP's Video News, y'all. Yep, that's right. KP's Video News, and we doing it up. We doing it up. We doing it down. Shake it in, shake it out, all the way around. Yep. All right, folks. I'm gonna dive right in here. I just received a report that the coward that ended up shooting those unarmed people in Buffalo has been sentenced, and the white supremacist who pled guilty to killing 10 black people in a racist mass shooting at Buffalo, New York supermarket was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole today after an emotional sentencing hearing, which was briefly interrupted when someone rushed at him. Family members of several victims spoke about their loved ones during Peyton Gendron's sentencing hearing in Erie County Court, where he pled guilty in November to more than a dozen charges, including murder and domestic terrorism motivated by hate. The terrorism charge carried an automatic life sentence. There can be no mercy for you, no understanding, no second chances, Judge Susan Egan said before sentencing Gendron. You will never see the light of day as a free man ever again. Egan spoke about the legacy and impact of white supremacy in the United States and the life of each of the victims as she imposed 11 life sentences, which will run concurrently. Gendron was also sentenced to 25 years on each of 3 counts of attempted murder to be served consecutively, and a 15-year sentence for a weapons charge. Victims, families, and survivors spoke out, and the family members of those killed in the attack shared memories of their loved ones, condemned the racism that motivated the shooting, and urged the judge to impose the maximum sentence on Gendron. Christopher Braden said that he suffered from PTSD after being shot in the leg and described the slow, painful recovery process. Said the visions haunt him every night, and the scars and pain will remind him how long and how strong he's become. Some angrily condemned Gendron. Others, like Kimberly Salter, the widow of security guard Aaron Salter, quoted from the Bible. And Gendron spoke briefly before being sentenced. I'm not going to even read what he said. I'm not going to even read it because it's not even worth reading. Gendron was briefly taken from the courtroom after a person lunged at him while Barbara Massey Maps excoriated him from killing her 72-year-old sister, Catherine Massey. The person was restrained by officers. I'm sure that all of you are disturbed by the physicality that we've seen in the courtroom here today, Egan said when the court resumed. Now, I understand that emotion and I understand the anger, but we cannot have that in the courtroom. And Gendron shot 13 people with a semi-automatic rifle at a Tops Friendly Market on May 14th. 3 people survived the attack, which Gendron live streamed. He actually live streamed it. And the documents posted online, Gendron said that he hoped the attack would help preserve white power in the United States. He also wrote that he picked the Tops grocery store about a 3-hour drive from his home in Conklin, New York, because it was in a predominantly black neighborhood. Wow. And the victims range from 38 years old to 86 years old. Aaron Salter Jr., Ruth Whitfield, Pearl Young, Catherine Massey, Roberta Drury, Haywood Patterson, Celestine Cheney, Andre McNeil, Geraldine Talley, and Marcus Morrison. And the shooter also faces federal hate crime charges, and his guilty plea on the state charges could potentially help him avoid the death sentence in the federal charges and the penalty phase of any federal trial. In the December hearing, defense attorney said Gendron was prepared to enter a guilty plea in federal court in exchange for a life sentence. And that should not be allowed to happen. That shouldn't be allowed to happen at all, man. Shouldn't be allowed to get a plea deal plea deal like that when you talking about you murdered people, man. Nah, you shouldn't be able to allow to get no plea deal. And a relative of one of the victims, shot by Genron, charged at him in the court as he prepared to be sentenced to life in prison. Genron was sitting at a defense table listening to his victim's relatives give impact statements, and so wow, he was motivated by his hatred of black people. Crazy, man. These people never did a thing to you. Never did a thing. Never lifted a finger against you. Some of the people was like 80 years old. They old 80-year-old lady, man. What could she possibly do to you? Or what could she possibly you don't even you a 2-hour ride away from that city, completely away from that city, nowhere near that city. You went out of your way to do what you did, and you deserve to suffer daily. Yep. All right, back to Memphis again. Preston Hemphill, the white cop was fired as part of the Tyree Nichols arrest, was once so-called praised for his ability to extinguish volatile situations. Mm-hmm. So in a 2021 performance review, he was praised for his ability to extinguish volatile. That was just 2 years ago. This 2023. This is in 2021. His supervisors in 2021 performance review for his honesty, reliability, and ability to extinguish volatile situations. Hemphill, who joined the Memphis Police Department in 2018, was fired February 3rd for his role at the scene of the Tyree Nichols beating. Lee Gerald, an attorney representing Hemphill, previously stated that his client was the third officer at the initial stop. As per departmental regulations, Officer Hemphill activated his body cam and added that Hemphill was never present in the second scene. That was the body cam footage of the later release of them beating him. So personnel files obtained show that Hemphill had never before been cited for the use of force-related misconduct, but was disciplined twice over damaging department equipment. 2019, Hemphill left a ticket printer on the trunk of his cruiser after a traffic stop, and it was destroyed when he drove away. In January 2022, he crashed his cruiser on his way to a shooting and damaged the front bumper. Hemphill took responsibility for both incidents and received written reprimands. In a performance review last year, a supervisor identified as A. King gave Hemphill mostly satisfactory remarks, noting that he was polite, reliable, and good understanding. Yeah. Oh, boy. Yep. So Hemphill needed improvement. He said the one area that Hemphill needed improvement was judgment. King noted that he had mishandled a call involving custodial issues. Hemphill was the sixth and the only white officer to be fired by the city of Memphis over the Scorpion Unit's beating of Tyree Nichols. Nichols called so those other cops, we already know their names, but lawyers representing Nichols' family previously suggested that Hemphill, the only known white officer in the interaction, was receiving special treatment from the police department. In a joint statement on January 30th, Nichols' families and attorney Ben Crump and Antonio Romanucci said it was disappointing that Hemphill had not yet been fired. Yeah, telling you, man. And this moving on to the next city. This is the city of Charlotte, North Charlotte. Is that Charlotte, North Carolina? What state is that in? Let me see. What state is that in? Because they got a lot of cities called Charlotte. And I'm trying to find out what city it was. Anyway, here's the situation. On a routine day in the day of Charlotte, I'm going to say it was probably North Carolina. Safety handles about, the city of Charlotte handles about 80 million gallons of raw sewage. On what she describes as the worst morning of her life, Stephanie Walker says a clogged sewer main in her North Side neighborhood threw the waste disposal system into reverse and backed a huge amount of the muck into her home. It geysered out of her toilets and spread deep and through every room. In a matter of minutes, the 76-year-old widow was homeless, and she blamed the city. In her new 16-page federal lawsuit, Walker and her attorney alleged that not only did the city sewer lines cause the problem, but city policies unnecessarily prolonged Walker's ordeal. First, while the raw sewage was still streaming through Walker's home, a city representative made a maximum settlement of $15,000 well before the full extent of the damage to her property was known. Next, according to the complaint, the city demanded that Walker waive any future claims against the city before she had access to the money, delaying her home repairs for months. The waiver also required Walker to meet a higher standard of proof if she sued. Other damages Walker incurred were not the city's concern, says her attorney, Shane Perry, whom contacted her after filed a suit. The city, according to the complaint, refused to pay for Walker to have a hotel room, refused to pay to replace ruined furniture, cabinets, and other belongings, refused to cover costs and compensate Walker for emotional suffering she experienced while being forced out of her home for almost 8 months. In the end, Walker signed the city's waivers only because she was on the verge of sleeping in her car. The truth is that the city has been absolutely disgusting in a way they have handled this situation. She's a taxpayer. She helped pay for that sewer system. This is the city of Charlotte. This is how they treat their citizens. Also, during a phone interview, Walker said some of the hardest parts of the past year involved her standing up alone against the city. She says that didn't appear to care about what her life had become. It was being single, the loneliness, and not knowing where to turn, she stated. People telling you that they understand and they sympathize, that they're sorry, but they're finding out that the city is not as compassionate or understanding or helpful as they say they are, discovering that it was hands off. A senior assistant attorney, Attorney Court Fulton, who represented the city in the negotiations over the settlement of Walker's damages, did not respond to an email that included specific questions concerning the lawsuit's allegations. The spokesman, Lawrence Corley, later stated that the city would not comment on a pending court case. Walker's ordeal, according to the complaint, exposes the city utter disregard and the plight of her and all that it damaged, and shows the intent of the city to take advantage of underprivileged citizens. Wow. If this was the mayor's house, do you think that he would have to file a lawsuit to get what she deserves? It would have been taken care of on the very first day. But this was a poor black lady's house, and so as far as they was concerned, it belonged to a nobody. Yep. Wow, man, this is ridiculous. Yep. Wow. Fulton reported in a reply that Walker might make a claim for the actual cash value of any damage or furniture. Any such claims, however, would count toward the city's $45,000 cap, assuming Walker signed the waivers and got the money. Very soon, counteroffers saying the client was desperate enough to settle her claim for $65,000. Fulton, according to the lawsuit, refused to budge. Ms. Walker is losing her housing and will be sleeping in her car, he wrote. She has no choice but to sign, but she's in her late 70s and won't last long living in her car. Walker signed a release 2 days later, but added a caveat under her signature. I'm homeless and I don't have another choice, she wrote. And the city, displaying unmitigated heartlessness, according to the lawsuit, rejected the document and said Walter had to sign a clean copy. Otherwise, according to Fulton's email, she would leave the impression that the release was not signed freely and was under duress. Wow. Final repairs. Walker's lawsuit accuses the city of undue influence in forcing her to sign the waivers, negligence in its operation of its sewer system, and as well violations of the U.S. and North Carolina constitutions, among other claims. It calls for a jury trial as well as compensatory damages. And Wednesday marks the one-year anniversary of Walker's sewer disaster. She says she'll spend part of the day on a final walkthrough with the foreman of a repair crew. She says she's happy to be back in her house, but she says she's not entirely satisfied with some of the fixes. After all this time, her home, she says, is not quite right. Wow. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's been a year to the day about this disaster that she had to go through. And I'm telling you, man, when stuff like that happens, and it's the city's fault, I don't care what city you live in, you know, it's this stuff like this is capable of happening to you just like it happened to her. Yep. So anyway, folks, it's KP's Video News. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Don't forget to comment. Guys are not leaving any comments here. You know, it's KP's Video News, y'all. You know who it is. KP's Video News, y'all.
KP's Video News, y'all.
That's right.
KP.